Well, as I promised, we have another film acting coach with us today. Rob Adams. That name sounds familiar? Yes, it's my son. How long have you been coaching now?
20 years next March.
That's hard to believe.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah. You started here as a student right after you came from college. You went to...
Cal State Hayward, up in the Bay Area.
And what was your major when you were up there?
Radio, TV, film.
And what your intent was going to be what?
Well, I was going to play football. I actually went to school to play football there, and I figured since I had been around the workshop for all the years, since about 9 years old, coming in filming and showcases and all that stuff, that I would learn the behind-the-scenes stuff. So I picked a major of radio, TV, film, because I figured I wasn't going to learn about acting up there. I would learn about acting here. So I learned about editing and using the camera and that kind of stuff while I was playing football in school.
In a perfect world, which one would you have preferred? Playing football or working as an actor and coaching actors?
Well, if I would have played football, I'd be retired now and I'd be done.
Make as much money as Michael Vick.
Right. But in the long run, I have to say that I do really enjoy the coaching. I think it's something pretty special, and I get to work with a lot of great people, and it's pretty fun.
Are there similarities between coaching actors and coaching football?
Absolutely. It's very similar. You have to teach them to play the game. So the practice is where the thinking is. The practice is where you get them to understand the technique. But when they get to the game, they play the game. And that's ultimately what you want them to do, is by the time they get to the game, or in our case, in front of the camera, that it's instinctive and it's in the moment, and you play the game rather than think throughout the game.
I know you think that all these years I kind of watch over your shoulder, but really, I mean, being honest, you do your own thing here.
I talk about this sometimes in class, actually, because when I first started, I felt like I had to kind of emulate what you did when I was in class, and I felt a lot of times like that was causing me to force things. I was trying to be something I wasn't. And once I started to, and it only took a few months, but once I started easing into my own way of doing things, I just figured that I have to do what my personality and what I bring to the table, and it's not necessarily what Dad brings to the table. Mm-hmm. We teach the same thing, we teach the same technique, we have the same points, but in our approach it's different. But I think where it really makes a difference is that I sat in class just like all the students did. Yeah. I was trained by you just like the other students are. So I think where the perspective is that I can bring to it where it's different is that I was like them. I was one of them at one point, and so I can sympathize with the things that they go through with the script, or the thinking, or all the different things that I went through as a student. So I think that's where it changes, is that I can bring in just a different perspective. So even though you studied and you went through workshops, I went through this workshop.
Well, that's the thing. You either have had to study acting yourself or worked as an actor in order to tell others how to go about doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, I tell them stories when I'm talking about how frustrating cold readings are, that you used to crumple up my page and throw it across the room. So I know what it's like when they hear get off the page, because I went through it just like everybody else.
Wait a minute. I used to crumple up your script and throw it across the room.
You did. You did. You did. But you know what? That's
you got special treatment,
well,
Rob.
Extra treatment. But I think it gets the point across to, being able to pass it on to the different level of actors.
As you progressed as a coach, did you find there were things that I wasn't looking after the way I should have, or that you corrected yourself?
When I first started teaching, you started implementing how we didn't have a socializing atmosphere. Our students didn't date, they didn't party, they didn't hang out together. And when I came in, I felt it was really important to carry that on to an extreme, because we're in a business of teaching people to drop their guard and be vulnerable and use what they have. And if they feel like they're being judged, if they feel like there's cliques, if they feel like they're in situations, all they're going to do is close up. And I think it creates an environment where everybody comes in and they feel comfortable, whatever class they're in. They feel like they're here 10 years. And it could be their first day, because everybody's here for the same reason, to learn about acting, to be actors, and there's none of that cliques, there's none of that stuff, which would be the way it would be on the set anyways. You wouldn't go on the set and try to create friends and relationships and cliques like that, because you're not going to last too long. So I think it creates the professional environment, but it also creates a safe environment for the students to be able to be comfortable in what they're doing. But beyond that, I think the workshop is still pretty much the way it's been for the 32 years. I think the base is still the same. I think the quality is definitely the same, if not better.
You know, there is a legend of how you were catapulted in the position of acting coach. How did that all come about?
As the story goes, you were in Europe, and the guy that was teaching at the time pretty much was the ringleader, had about 10, 12, 15 people kind of as his group, and I called him out on it, and we got in an argument, and I told him to drop his keys and get out, and then I called you in Europe and told you what happened, and you said you got to go in and teach it, and the first thing I did was the next day I took all those 15 people or whatever amount of numbers there were, and I threw them all out and tried to get it by the root, and you know, because it came down at that point to protecting the business. The funny thing is that people don't realize that this was not the master plan, that you had not groomed me to be the acting coach in waiting. It was something that had happened.
Yeah.
And that was my first class that night.
What approach do you use or that you find most effective in coaching actors?
I want to have a fun environment, so I keep the energy high. But what I always try to do is, because I always make sure the students work 2-3 times a class, I really try to hammer them early in the class, and by the end of the class, hopefully get that result out so that you can turn around and say, hey, you're capable of doing this. See, you just did it. And so you get them hard early, and then by the end of the class, they're leaving with going, wow, I had some success. Yeah, it broke me down early, but by the end of class, I could feel what he was talking about, or I was doing what he was talking about, and then they want to carry that into the next class.
But you don't yell and scream.
I think people that yell and scream are people that can't teach or coach. I think it's a shield for lack of knowledge or lack of being able to coach. I think you have to nurture and teach, but I'm just straightforward. I'm direct.
Well, we're going to keep you over one more week, and we're going to talk to you about your coaching career, not only in football, but in acting, and also your career as an actor. Next week, more with Rob Adams here on the Coaching Corner on the Virtual Channel Network. I am R.J. Adams. We'll see you then.